Hey everybody, it's Bill Varney from FishTheSurf.com with your Thursday, August 21st surf fishing report. So wow, last week, unbelievable comeback week. You know, that previous week before that we had the swells and that really strong current from the south. That has all died down, and last week was a fantastic surf fishing week. Really improved all along the coast. So let's start up in Santa Barbara, where cleaner water meant more fish, and I think more anglers too, getting out into the surf. Halibut fishing in the Santa Barbara area has been good in really two specific areas, that between More Mesa Beach and the Goleta Pier, that's up by the University, UCSB, and then down from about East Beach all the way down past Henry's Beach into Montecito. Those areas have kind of been the best areas for surf fishing over the last week for halibut, and the anglers in those areas have been using, once again, like white or very light color flukes, light color swim baits, Lucky Craft lures, Battlestar lures. All four of those have been working in the surf there for halibut fishing. I think that will continue to get good and even be better as this Grunion run comes in over the weekend, and most likely those bigger fish will come into shore. So that is a really good sign, and we'll have to certainly keep our eye on that for sure. Perch fishing in general has been really good up and down the Santa Barbara coast, the whole zone. They've all been those smaller palm-sized perch, but they've been all along just about everywhere. And people using gulp baits, grubs, sand crabs, lugworms, and bloodworms have had really good luck on those perch. There's tons of them. And then the other news is some anglers have been really hooking into the cabezon up there. Some nice sized cabezon for anglers fishing around rocky areas using strips of squid. So a good spot for that is between Hope Ranch and Ledbetter Beach, below the cliffs there. That's a nice spot for fishing cabezon in that area. And then once again, look for rocky structure. You'll find a lot of that north of Goleta, north of Santa Barbara, up toward the Hollister Ranch. There'll be a lot of cabezon. This is the time of year that the cabezon begin their spawn, so usually really good time of year for that. And certainly I've caught them all the way up along the Halama area into Vandenberg Air Force Base. They're all along there wherever you have rock structure, so look for those cabezon. And then the exciting news is that the corbina are back. A couple of nice sized corbina were caught this week at La Conchita. They were caught on fly line soft shell sand crabs at La Conchita. One was over 21 inches long, so that's a beautiful fish. And the really good news about that is that just shows us that, as in any traditional summer, those corbina are moving their way up north along the coast, following that warm water current. And many times when those fish make their way up to Carpinteria, which we're going to see here in just a couple of weeks, really through October, and then up into Montecito and Henry's Beach and all the way up to the Stearns Wharf up there, those fish are going to be much bigger fish. Some of the biggest fish I've caught in that area have been in that September, October period, where there's no little ones. There's none of those 12 to 18 inch corbina. They're all 20 plus inches. So look for that to improve, starting in Carpinteria, Rincon, Carpinteria, working its way up into and throughout Santa Barbara County. So that's really good news. And then the other thing is, when we moved down to Ventura, wow, I mean, it just exploded this week in corbina. Previous week, really quite slow. The surf was big. There was some wind on top of it. There was a strong current. Last week, absolutely excellent corbina fishing, with one angler getting 5 fish in 3 days, and many other anglers reporting in on these nice sized corbina, and some big fat ones, some 20 plus inch corbina down there. So it's been really good corbina fishing, and there's no place in particular. You know, I really think that, I mean, obviously all the way up to La Conchita, but Freya or Ventura Overhead, Emma Woods, all the way down through the Oxnard Coast, Point Hueneme, all of that, all along that area has been really good for surf fishing for corbina, and that will continue to be good. Another thing down there is there's been some really nice barred surf perch down there, up to 12, maybe even 13 inches in that area. So that's a good sign. And then a lot of walleye down there. So all of those are a really good sign. And the anglers fishing for those perch have been using lugworms, bloodworms, soft shell sand crabs, gulp, and then also grubs. So All of those things have been working on the Carolina rig in the surf in Ventura. Really, like I said, all along there where the jetties are, and then even farther south for those different types of perch. So great perch fishing there, and continued excellent fishing for corbina. Ventura, without question, has had the best corbina fishing all summer long, maybe even all year, this whole year long, along the coast. So that is great news, and that won't change unless those fish make their way to Santa Barbara, and they're just a few miles away then. As we make our way down to the South Bay, Hermosa and Manhattan Beach, they continue to kick out the corbina. One angler there was telling me this week, he said, you know, the real trick down there is, number one, going down early or the day before and finding the sand crabs that you're going to use for bait. Finding those soft shell sand crabs, getting them ready before you go to the beach so you don't have to spend any time looking for them. He said the second thing is downsizing your gear. You want to fish with that 4 or 6 pound fluorocarbon leader. And then lastly, he said one of the best times it seems to fish down there, and we're going to find this in Orange County too, is that low tide coming up to high tide. Not at a peak high tide or around the peak tide, but really about an hour or two after low tide up to high tide as those fish are coming in with the surf. So that continues to be good down there. There's a lot of barred and walleye surf perch. Once again, those palm size down the whole South Bay all the way through Redondo down into Torrance. And then the other thing is we had some good reports, not only in Hermosa Beach, but down in Torrance Beach about these big or medium-sized yellowfin croaker, these 2 to 3 pounders that are out there chasing bait. And people are fishing for those with lures like crocodiles, cast masters, things like that seem to be the most effective. Something flashy that can be cast a distance really seems to work best for those yellowfin croaker down in the South Bay. So that, you know, that Hermosa Manhattan continues to stay good on those corbina. I don't think I'll see change of that much really even along the whole coast this week, as we have swells coming in, but they're from such a long distance away, 4,000 to 5,000 miles from Southern California, that they're very small and they don't have as much current as that last set of swells. And there's 2 or 3 of those groups of swells coming in a row over the next week and a half or so, which once again will push more warm water into all of Southern California and make the surf fishing even better. So as we make our way down to Orange County, you know, once again that Belmont Pier all the way to Seal Beach breakwater has been really good for those sub-legal halibut. I mean, there's literally been tons of them caught in there. I mean, some anglers are coming back saying, Bill, you know, I'm catching 8 to 15 of them in a session. So there's a lot of them in there. And I think this grunion run coming up this weekend is really going to help to bring those bigger fish closer to shore. And if I was to want to go down there and catch a big halibut this weekend in that zone, that Belmont Pier to Seal Beach breakwater zone, I would definitely wait till the grunion run is maybe had a day or two, and then fish through the grunion run and into next week when those bigger fish and other fish come in close to feed. And all the anglers up and down the coast have been fishing these halibut, have basically been fishing the same lures, have had the same success. The light colored or white flukes on the drop shot, Lucky Craft baits, Battlestar baits, white or light colored, very light color, I've seen white and olive have worked well on the swim baits also. All of those have worked really well in the surf for fishing for halibut. The key to that, though, if you really want to have a good chance at the big fish, is the guys who go and they collect and catch on their sabiki rig the smelt in the bay, put them in a bucket, and then take them over to the ocean and fish them on the Carolina rig. There's no question you'll get fish that way. So Orange County continues to be good, and as we make our way down to Surfside, you know, Surfside can be on and off down there. That's right before you get to Bolsa Chica. That zone can be good and it can be slow and you never really know. Last week, really good for corbina fishing down there, with several anglers getting fish over 20 inches down there in the surf. So that has picked up in that area, and you can traditionally really count on down there walleye and those palm-sized barred surf perch. There's always a lot down in that area too. So that stretch has worked out really good. And then when we make our way to Bolsa Chica, good perch fishing, good yellowfin croaker fishing. Once again, those moderate 2 to 3 pound yellowfin croaker in those zones. And once again, a lot of anglers down there have been using the Castmasters crocodiles so they can cast out and cover as much surface area as possible. Also, they've been finding those big yellowfin croaker down around the Newport jetties. And also around the Newport jetties has been barracuda boiling in the surf line and right outside the surf line, pushing up bait there. And some of those have been landed also sublegals in that Newport Beach area. So keep your eye on that. I think also you're going to see when that bait gets boiling up out there, it's not only things like barracuda and halibut pushing it up, but very likely, especially in that area, the Newport Jetties area, stripers down there. So keep your eye on that. Don't, hesitate from seeing that happening and making your way quickly and safely out on one of the jetties so you have a little better angle at casting into them and catching some big fish that way. That's also always been a traditionally good way to get those stripers, halibut, sea bass, and other fish pushing up that bait in the surf. And then when you look at the pier in Newport all the way down to the wedge, that zone has been a little bit slower, but still good for perch fishing, palm size perch fishing down in that zone. So that area's been really good. We didn't hear much this week about that Doheny, San Onofre area. Didn't see many reports from down there. Once again, I think we're somewhat affected by all the kids going back to school, and certainly not as many people at the beach right now as there was before, but I know there's fish down there also. So we make our way down to San Diego. San Diego has also been struggling back and forth with that eelgrass, kelp and so forth in the surf. We're going to talk about that in our tips section here in just a minute. They've been struggling with that, but with that said, it's still been really good surf fishing down there. And the anglers who are finding softshell sand crabs in advance and fishing those have done really well. As a matter of fact, one angler in central San Diego County went 9 for 14 on corbina on there, using sand crabs, using a very, very light rig close to shore for corbina. His biggest fish being 26 inches. That's really close to the record. That's a fish that's over 20 years old, just a monster corbina. And so keep your eye on the water. Now, he's a lifeguard. He has a lot of time to spend sitting in his tower and looking in the water and watching the corbina's behavior. But once again, preparing in advance is what's going to make you a successful angler for sure. And then the other news about San Diego is down in Mission Bay. One angler down there in 3 days caught 5, or maybe it was more than that, 5 or 6 nice corvina. And he gave us a couple of tips as anglers of what to look for when fishing in San Diego Bay and Mission Bay for corvina. The first thing is that he used the Lucky Craft lure. So Lucky Craft Battlestar lures. Easy to cast, easy to get in the zone you want to, certainly easy to use because they have so much action on their own. So use those. His second tip was look for areas where you have rock structure, you have pilings coming down into the water. That's where you're going to find the fish. Another tip of his was he had his best luck at high tide, 2 hours before high tide to 2 hours after high tide. And lastly, and what he said was maybe most important, was on those corvina, they seemed to congregate where there were areas of shade meeting areas of sunshine in the water. So there was something overhead that cast shade on the water, and right on those edges is where he was finding fish. And one other thing I want to add to that too on corvina is corvina not only are feed during the day, but they feed a lot during night too. So although you won't find the shadow versus sunlight situation at night, line yourself up with areas where there's rock structure, there's pilings in the water, where there's structure there, fish there with the same lures at night. I think you'll probably have the same luck with that too. And then lastly, in San Diego, the perch fishing really, once again, all along the coast, and I really think it's from Coronado, all the way to Vandenberg Air Force Base, has been really pretty much wide open on these palm size perch. One thing you'll see about the beach now is that many of the sand crabs are disappearing. A lot of anglers have come to me and said, hey Bill, they're getting harder and harder to find. And this is something that we talked about before, a bait transition. And that's what's going on right now. Not only have these fish gorged themselves on sand crabs for the last 3 months, but now they're getting harder and harder to find, and certainly harder to find the softshell sand crabs. So now is certainly the time to begin your bait transition and think about using things like lugworms, bloodworms, ghost shrimp, mussel, clams, sandworms. All of those things will work in the surf, and all of those things this time of year will be very attractive to fish. I wanted to remind everybody, hey, if you haven't done so, sign up for my newsletter at fishthesurf.com. We just send you a newsletter every month with all kinds of details about surf fishing, pictures, reports, conditions, all that stuff. Please subscribe, like, and share this post and video if you enjoyed it. I really would appreciate that for sure. The final scheduled grunion run is this weekend, the 23rd through the 26th. Really good time, and maybe your last chance of this year to pick up grunion. You can collect up to 30 of them right now, freeze them, and use them at the beach, in the bay, or offshore for fish. They work for absolutely every kind of fish out there. So now is maybe your last weekend to get out there and not only see them, but collect some for future fishing coming up this weekend for sure. And then a couple of things I want to talk about is one is about seaweed and fishing with seaweed and what can you do to have better luck when you've got seaweed around. So when seaweed comes up on the beach, it's all over and it gets all over your line. And believe me, not only does it close in on your bait and the fish can't see it, but I really don't think that the fish enjoy swimming around it. They don't mind a piece of kelp that's anchored to the bottom and it's been there the whole life, but they really don't like this stuff swashing around in the surf. So when I fish places like San Diego and Santa Barbara that tend to have a lot of kelp and seaweed in the water, I always fish from 1 hour or 1.5 hours after low tide up to high tide. That way most of the grass and seaweed is on the beach behind me, of course, doesn't enter the water. And another thing we know is that most surffish, in particular corbina, they follow that tide as it makes its way in and covers up more wet sand, and that's where they find their food. So they're always surfing each progressive wave in. So once again, about 1.5 hours after low tide up to high tide seems to be the best time to fish those kelpy, seaweedy type of beaches. And then my last tip is the longshore current, and that's what, of course, we had a couple of weeks ago that was so strong. If you cast out straight in front of you and your line catches that current and it fulcrums into shore, not only are you not going to catch any fish, but you might wrap it around the kid's leg 100 yards down the beach or some beach goer, and the next thing you know, you're thrown off the beach because you're not paying attention. So what I like to do is, if the current is coming up the coast, I look slightly down the coast at about 10 o'clock and cast out to that. I allow my line to fulcrum so it's finally straight out in front of me, and then once it passes me and begins to come into shore, I just slowly walk with my fishing rod and reel up my slack at about the speed that my line is making its way down to the beach. And that may take me 50 yards down the beach, but what will happen is my bait, my offering to the fish, will stay in the strike zone the entire time and slowly make its way down to the beach. When I see my sinker come up on shore, I reel up and walk back to the spot I started in and go through the same pattern again. 10 o'clock, let it fulcrum in front of me. Once it starts going past me, I'll slowly walk along with it. You'll find that's not only much better way to control your line, but you'll catch more fish that way. So thanks for watching the report today, and until next week when I see you right here, good luck at the beach.